I'd now like to call up Joey Hernandez, who is going to be the presenter for our next session called Navigating with Confidence with LHON. You may have seen her running around here. She's got an armful of canes. She'll explain a little bit more about her background, but we're super excited to have her here. So Joey, if you could come up. That's good. And she's working her cane. Look at that. Yes.
Welcome to Navigating with Confidence with LHON. My name is Josephine Hernandez, or Joey. Going into a couple of slides from here, a little bit of background information so you know who's talking. You know, I'm coming into this with a little bit of background information. My name is Josephine Hernandez, or Joey. If you see me running around, I am wearing a black shirt and checkered pants today, and I have long dark hair. And I'm probably carrying like 8 different canes with me. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Communications and a Bachelor's in American Studies from Cal State Fullerton. But most importantly, I'm currently working on my Master's in Special Education with a focus in orientation and mobility at San Francisco State University. Another thing about me is I've been affected for 10 plus years now. So I'm speaking on this not only as a person who is teaching others about navigating independently, but also as somebody who has been affected. Next slide. So you know what you're getting into today. This presentation will describe the purpose and benefits of orientation and mobility training. And it will also talk about some strategies for independent navigation on the whole for people affected with LHON. I'm going to go in depth into white canes, different parts of white canes, and how they can be effective tools for many people with low vision. I'm also going to give you a sampler plate of different things related to orientation and mobility, such as how to more effectively ask for directions, alongside how to find dropped objects. Hopefully that last one will come in handy in case you're packing and you drop anything on your way back from the conference. And a quick overview of what this particular presentation will entail. It is going to include an audience interactive game, so I hope y'all are listening. I hope y'all are ready to play. I'm going to direct you towards some further resources. And if you click on the Documents tab in the MITO or UMDF app, you'll see that some of those documents are already up. Feel free to take a look at them at any point in time. And I'm also going to include some time for audience questions. So please hold those towards the end. And if you raise your hand, I won't see you. I'm going to have somebody else come up to you. All right. So that leads us into our true or false game. We're going to do this as a bit of a lightning round. You can say to the person next to you, you can shout it out loud, whether or not you think each of the following questions is true or false. So the first one, you have to be totally blind to use a white cane. Excellent. That's correct. You do not have to be totally blind. Many people with low vision find them to be helpful tools, which I'm going to expand on in a little bit. Okay, next question. If you use a white cane, you have to use it 100% of the time. Y'all are great. You already know. Some people find white canes to be helpful in only certain circumstances and may pull it out and put it back as needed. Okay, next question. People with all levels of vision loss are able to independently navigate. There is more hesitation on that one. Interesting. That is true. People, whether they are on the low vision side or whether they are on the no vision side, are able to travel independently. And I'll talk about some of the ways that they can get help to learn how to get there, whether that be feeling comfortable walking throughout your own home or flying across the country to go to a conference and make new friends. Okay, next one. Ophthalmologists prescribe the usage of a white cane. I heard a little bit of hesitation, but that is correct. It is false. Ophthalmologists are wonderful and they are great at giving you information about the health of your eye. And they can also sometimes even direct you towards additional resources. However, the professionals that are able to give you more information about white canes are non-medical professionals, and I'll speak on them in just a little bit. And I only got 2 more left for this true or false game. This one is a bit of a tricky one. The amount of red on a white cane indicates how much vision a person has left. False. This is something that has been going around on TikTok. Some people have said that the red indicates that you have low vision, but in actuality, the red on a white cane is meant to make it more visible if you live in a snowy area. In some parts of the world, the red does indicate deafblindness, but if you're here in the United States, it doesn't matter whether you have an all-white cane or a cane that is red and white. They both serve the same function. The red is just helpful in case you're in a blizzard. And the last one, O&M stands for organization and movement. Correct. See, I can't trick you guys. You're too good at this. O&M actually stands for orientation and mobility, which leads us into our next section, O&M 101. Let's start off. What is orientation and mobility? Orientation and mobility is the field of teaching blind and visually impaired people how to travel independently. Orientation is understanding where you are and where you want to go, spatial information, spatial concepts. And mobility is understanding how to safely get there, what strategies you can use, how you can move from one space to another. There are a variety of things that orientation and mobility specialists, these are the people who teach these skills, can work on with their students in one-on-one lessons. So what a lesson might look like for you might be different from a friend of yours, whether or not they have the same vision as you, because again, O&M specialists are there to address your individual needs. So some of the topics that O&M specialists can cover can include things like guide training, how to navigate through a building, how to use ride-sharing apps, how to use paratransit, how to use public transit, GPS apps, you name it. And that is only a small amount of some of the things that can be covered. So if you take anything away from my presentation today, it's if you have not done so already, I encourage you to consider seeking out orientation and mobility training. And if you've already received some, it's okay to go back and receive additional training. One of the tools that many people work on in orientation and mobility training is the usage of the white cane. And I know some people in here might hear white cane and think, not for me, no thanks. Don't worry, hold tight. I'm going to talk about some non-cane related strategies later on, but I do encourage you to keep an open mind. White canes serve two functions. They provide auditory and tactile feedback about your surrounding environment, and they also identify you as a person with a visual impairment. And both of those are very important. So starting off with the first one, you might be thinking, whoa, but I can still see. Yeah, my vision's affected, but I still have some vision. I can still see a lot of shapes. I can move around. I don't need a cane. Well, for people who have low vision, there are a lot of additional factors that could affect mobility. So even if you can still see, you might have difficulty locating drop-offs and texture changes, especially in low contrast environments. Have you ever noticed yourself when you're in a space where maybe you think that there's steps, but you're not sure if there's steps, and then you're walking like a chicken and prodding it with your foot? That's a common experience. Another thing that is difficult for many people is depth perception. Again, chicken walk. Sometimes using that remaining vision when you're especially tired, stressed, or hungry, that can be difficult. So I know many students out there may have difficulty during final season. Things may be a little bit blurrier then. And also using your remaining vision in certain types of lighting environments. So when it's especially dark out, or perhaps maybe when it's really bright out, maybe you're used to using your vision a certain way most of the time, but in those settings, you're like, oh man, I feel off right now. In which case, that's where a cane can be helpful. So I am going into a video that shows what my remaining vision looks like. Is it up on the screen? There we go. So a description for any of our friends who aren't able to see it. This shows a blurred image. My vision is about 2600. We know that there's a lot of variation in how affected people can see. And I also constantly see neon lights. Those are in the center. If you could press play. Well, and if it doesn't play, you can always come up to me afterwards and I'd be happy to show you. Does it play? Okay, so the video isn't playing. That's okay. I've got another example to show you. On the next slide, I am showing a picture of a real set of steps that I encountered once at an Airbnb. The steps are fairly steep. They're concrete. They're very low contrast. There's no railing along the edges, and they're kind of scary looking. On the right-hand side, I show an altered image that shows what my perspective looks like with my remaining vision. And there it shows, again, the neon dots in the middle and a blurred image of the steps. It's my perspective looking down from the top, and there you can't see a separation between any of the steps. I was certainly grateful to have my cane in that environment. Moving on, talking about some of the benefits for social settings. Identifying as a person with a visual impairment can help you in many different settings and many ways of explaining some of the experiences that you may have as a person affected with LHON. So here are some real stories of people affected with LHON who were non-cane users. And, you know, I will admit one of these stories is mine. I won't say which one it is right now because it is embarrassing. But the first one, a sticky situation. A person who was affected with LHON had a wad of gum. She decided she wanted to throw it out in the trash can. She went over to toss it in the trash can, and thankfully somebody stopped her because it was not a trash can, it was a person. Having a cane might have been helpful for explaining why she was about to toss some gum at somebody. The next one, mannequin mayhem. Person was in a store, she saw a really cute outfit, she thought, oh my gosh, I want to go and check this out, and she goes to feel the mannequin. It was not a mannequin. Again, cane might have been helpful in that environment. Here's yet another person having a great time at an amusement park. You know, they're at a ride, they're with a friend, and this person goes to take a seat. And then an irate mother comes out and is like, why did you steal the seat from my child? That person didn't see the child and they were not using a cane. And the other person didn't believe them when they said, wait, no, I didn't see your kid. So there are lots of other stories out there. I've heard from people who accidentally cut people off when they're walking. Different situations where it might have been helpful to just explain, hey, I'm not able to see you. So in case you are interested in learning more about canes, or maybe you already are a cane user, here's some White Cane 101. Some important things to know about your cane is you want to know the type, material, tip that you're using, and the height. That way, in case you ever break one, have to reorder, you're able to know what you're using and why. For types of canes, there are three main types. There's folding, telescopic, and straight canes. I have a variety of folding canes with me today, and I'll be showing them in just a second. But also, if you have additional questions, feel free to come up to me and I'd be happy to show them off later on. And this next slide shows pictures of all three. Some people like using folding canes or telescopic canes because they're easy to put away. So if you're somebody who only uses a white cane when maybe, you know, the lighting's off, or maybe you're only using it when you're not sure about the ground, you can store it away in a backpack or purse. Straight canes are popular with some people because they feel they can get really good auditory or tactile feedback. So again, all of them are good options, but it depends on you and what works for you. The next thing to consider is the material. The three most common types of material are graphite, aluminum, and fiberglass, with fiberglass being the lightest weight and aluminum being the heaviest. Graphite is right there in the middle. Again, all of them are good options, but if you are a cane user or are considering becoming one, it's good to know what you're using, because that way, if you have to reorder it, you know what you're comfortable with. The size will depend on a couple different factors. So even people who are the same height might have different sizes for canes. Some factors could be your pace. It could be how long is your stride. Do you take big steps or baby steps? Do you have a long torso or a short torso? All of these things could affect the size. So I would recommend, if you haven't done so already, get measured by an orientation and mobility specialist. The tip, there are many different types. Some examples include pencil tips, rolling tips, rollerball tips, which there's a slight difference. One is kind of shaped like a tennis ball. Another one is shaped like a marshmallow. teardrop tips, metal tips. There's even one called a Dakota disc that's helpful for our friends who live out in snowy or sandy areas that kind of looks like a flying saucer. The reason why there are different types of tips is because some of them have benefits for different techniques. So for example, if you're somebody who likes a lot of auditory feedback, you may prefer using a metal tip because they're a lot louder. Whereas if you're somebody who wants to just easily glide over cracks in the sidewalk, that's where a rolling tip may end up being more of your preference. And an important thing to note is you do need to replace your cane tips from time to time. I have an example with me of a cane tip that was totally eaten through. It is very old and messy. And so if you need to replace your cane tip, I'll talk about how to do that in just a second. But the next slide shows some pictures of different types of cane tips. On the slide, there is a rolling marshmallow tip, which is the one that for any of our sighted friends who can see, they are shaped like a marshmallow. There's a pencil tip, which is in the upper right-hand corner, and the metal tip at the bottom. For replacing cane tips, there are two main types of ways to replace them. Again, these aren't the only ways, but these are the most common. There are slip-on cane tips where you have to hold onto it and yank it off. This one was a slip-on tip that I should have replaced a long time ago that I'm holding up for any of our sighted friends that has totally been eaten through. This used to look like a marshmallow. And the other style is a hook style tip. With that, it connects to the elastic in the center of the cane. And I'm holding one up again for our sighted friends. These are fairly easy to replace. If you are nervous about replacing your cane tip, you can also reach out to a local orientation and mobility specialist and they'd be happy to help you out. And if you're like, okay, I want to use a cane, but I want it to showcase my personality, I got you. There are a ton of different ways to customize your cane usage to get it to feel more like you. So for example, some people will use colorful grips or tips. So I have a couple canes with colorful tips with colorful grips with me. I have one with a pink grip. Ambutech is a company that is great for selling those colorful options. I have another one with me I'll pull out in a second that has a blue grip. Some people will like to add charms to the elastic cord that sticks out, like keychains. That can also be helpful if you have a ton of other friends who are cane users and you want to identify, hey, which one's mine? Some people will use decorative cane holsters, little bags to hold their canes in. You can pick different colors. And some people will even use bedazzled canes. So I'm holding up one right now from a company called Glam Canes. This one is all white with a little bit of rose gold at the bottom, all covered in rhinestones. And the next slide shows different pictures again of ways that people have customized their canes. So it shows a bunch of examples from Glam Canes. It shows an example of a folding cane with a pink grip. And at the bottom, it shows another example of a cane holster. All right, we got through the talk of canes. Let's talk some additional strategies for orientation and mobility. Here's the sampler place. When you are out and about, gathering information is really important. And a great way that you can gather information is by seeking out public assistance. Here are some strategies to make that a little bit less frustrating. First, for even finding somebody to seek out public assistance from, you can pay attention to your environment. If you have enough vision to see a person-shaped figure, great. But if you don't, or if you're just not sure, you can use your listening skills and listen for things like footsteps. You can listen for things like voices, people breathing. That will give you a good idea of where you can go to find somebody to ask for help. You also want to listen in an extra second to make sure that you're going to a safe person. You don't want to go to somebody who sounds like they're muttering to themselves or somebody who is especially irate. Specific questions are more likely to yield specific answers. Let's be honest. How many people here have asked a question and have gotten, it's over there? Yep, that can definitely be frustrating. So if you were to say, for example, where's the canned food aisle? You might get, it's over there. But if you were instead to say, is the canned food aisle to my left? Is the canned food aisle to my right? You're more likely to get an answer that's going to be helpful to you. You want to repeat back instructions after you have said them, after somebody has given them to you. So that way you can make sure you remember everything and that they remember to give you all of the information. Gesture. Our sighted friends often forget their left and their right. So you want to reaffirm by saying, okay, so I'm going to turn to my right. And then they'll realize, oh, whoops, I said the wrong thing. And ask for clarification as many times as needed. The next tip on the sampler plate is finding dropped objects. If you drop something on the ground or on a table, you want to listen for where it landed. So that way you start out looking in the general direction of where you think it might have landed instead of somewhere way across the room. Most importantly, you want to use a systematic search pattern. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but it is essentially a way of knowing where you've already looked and where you still need to look. And if you drop something on the ground as opposed to on a table, then you want to protect your head because sometimes you're a little bit closer to furniture or to the wall than you expect. And so to protect your head, you can place your hand palm out in front of your face, about a hand space away from your face. So that way, when you bend over, again, if you're closer to the wall than you think that you are, then you'll make contact with your hand instead of with your beautiful face. So systematic search patterns. Here, I'm showing an image of a table with a coin on it and somebody who did not use a systematic search pattern. The arrows on there represent them looking frantically all over the place. They're trying to find their best fare and they were not able to find the coin. Whereas the next slide shows somebody who did use a grid pattern. For this, they started in the upper left-hand corner and moved directly across to the right. After they didn't find the coin, they went down slightly and then moved from right to left and repeated this pattern until they were able to successfully find the coin. The next slide shows a different type of search pattern. This one is concentric circles. So the person found a spot on the table, placed their hands on there, and felt in a circular shape, starting out with a small circle. After not initially finding the coin, they increase the radius slightly each time until they've increased the radius enough where they made contact with the coin and found what they were looking for. So have fun using that to find your keys, to find things that you drop, paper clips, binder clips, you name it. Some additional strategies that might be helpful while you're here traveling for conference. If you are ride sharing and you want to go on your ride share with a little bit more confidence, I would recommend always double checking, triple checking both your destination and your pickup location. The part of the reason I say this is because I learned from experience. One time I didn't double check and I ended up going to the wrong Marriott and having to spend $60. So learn from my mistakes, please. Always, always verify. If you are going somewhere you haven't been before, it can be helpful to do research on your destination ahead of time to, again, make sure you're going to the correct destination. When a driver arrives, ask who they're there to pick up because they will have your name. And while you're in the car, it's also okay to tell little white lies. So if the driver starts asking you information, you can always say, oh, I'm here to visit a friend instead of saying that you're at your house, because you want to think about, how much personal information am I putting out there to a stranger? And for safety, an option that you have with both Uber and Lyft is you can also share your location with a loved one. Speaking of loved ones, now we're on to tips for sighted supporters. First thing to know about being inclusive to our friends with LHON, and especially when it comes to giving directions and helping them navigate, is consent is key. First, you want to make sure that the person that you're helping navigate even wants assistance in the first place. And after you ask them, respecting their decision. Sometimes you may have somebody who you notice, hey, they kind of look lost, but they said they don't need help. That person could be practicing their problem-solving skills, and they could be having fun along the adventure. But let's say somebody does agree to assistance and say, I do need help figuring out how to get to the restroom or figuring out how to get to the store or anything like that. Each person is an individual, and so ask them how they would like to be assisted. Some people, for example, may just like some verbal directions. Other people may like a guide. And if you are guiding somebody, something that you can do if you are a sighted supporter is you can place the back of your hand on the back of their hand, and then they can feel forward for your forearm and then hold on almost as if they're holding on to like a glass of water. And then you can walk at a normal pace. Make sure that you're paying attention so you're not running and leaving them behind and you're going at a pace that's comfortable for them. But at the end of the day, just ask, don't assume, and figure out what works best for that individual. Let's say the person does want some directions. They do want verbal directions. Descriptive language is great. Descriptive language is when you can describe things more than just it's over there. So you want to consider what landmarks might the person encounter along the way. Maybe instead of saying it's over there, you could say, oh, it's near the large fountain. You want to think about what realistically that person would encounter. Using left and right and up and down. Cardinal directions, your north, south, east, and west. Now, granted, if the person you're talking to doesn't know their cardinal directions, that's okay. That might not be a tool that you want to use. And clock face directions. And for anybody here who has the app, the UMDF app, there is a couple of files that you might want to look at. There is alternatives to over there. It's a cheat sheet. So when you're like, oh my gosh, I don't remember how not to say it's over there, feel free to reference that. And there also is a cheat sheet on clock face directions. Another thing that is on there, if you wanted to look back and after this presentation, is there is a document that shows some of the places where you can acquire a white cane. It's not an exhaustive list, but it does show several different places. And it also includes the NFB's free white cane program. If you are in the United States and if you are legally blind, you can get free white canes. They are straight canes with metal tips, and that could be a great resource if you don't have the funding to pay for a cane at this point in time. And that brings us back to our objectives. Same as earlier, I'm hoping we accomplished all of these. I think we talked about white canes. We talked about the sampler plate of different orientation and mobility techniques. And we also talked about orientation and mobility on the whole. Feel free to come up to me